Keyboards. If you've used a computer, you've used a keyboard. They're the biggest way to input letters into a digital computer, and hey, I love keyboards. I consider myself to be the keyboard equivalent of an audiophile because I really, really love keyboards. Not even kidding, when my friends are looking for a keyboard to buy, they come to me for recommendations, and that's not even the biggest honor I've gotten. In fact, when I went to the guy that convinced me to build a PC, hi Jackson, when I went to him for keyboard advice, he straight up told me that I knew way more than him on keyboards. Like, dude, that means a lot to me. But anyways, you're not here to learn about my life story, you're here to learn about keyboards. So with keyboards, there are a lot of things that go into them. You know, the layout, the format, the switches, the profile, all of that. So today, I'm going to go through all of that and give you some examples of each of them because it wouldn't be a real guide to keyboards if I didn't have examples, dang it. Also for each switch type, I'm going to be giving some recommendations if you want to get into it. And no, this guide isn't just for gamers. I'm not going to say the G word around here. Keyboards are for everyone. Anyways, for those that grew up in the computer labs of school, you should know of some keyboards like this. Now, any gamer would call this a crusty Dell bad thing, but I would describe it as the following: a North American ANSI 104 key membrane rubber dome high profile crusty bad Dell thing. And throughout this video, I'm going to break down what all of that means. So, starting from the beginning, North American ANSI 104 key means that it has a 104 key layout, of course. Now, you would expect the other standard key layouts just to be named after the number of keys, but no. There are the regional variants based on which part of the world you are in. Sorry, I can't include yours. I only have these ones. Now, formats are different. The format is the size of the keyboard, and this also correlates to the amount of switches it has. There's 10 keyless, which doesn't have a number pad. There are 60%, which are even smaller, and there are even smaller ones that I don't even know the name of. Like you have the 68 key Keysound Magic Force. I mean, that thing is tiny. Now, going up in size, there are two keyboards that come to mind. Maltron formats, which is an ergonomic format used on keyboards like the Kinesis Advantage line, and then there are 122 key terminal keyboards that IBM started with the IBM Model F, and trust me, I have something to show you later. Now that's all fun with the formats and stuff. Now let's move on to the real fun of keyboards, the switches. Now switches are what make a keyboard do keyboardy stuff. It's the buttons, the keys, the click-clacks. And also, a lot of people think that cherry switches are the absolute best of the best switches and nothing else compares. Sorry to say this, but no. Cherry is like the Apple of the mechanical switch market. They're overpriced, mediocre at best, and the cheaper options can be much better. Good alternatives are Otemu and Gateron. I just wanted to get that out of the way. Let's move on. Now, before we talk about switches, we obviously need to talk about the bottom of the barrel. Membrane. Membrane is just rubber over a membrane that pushes it to itself to conduct electricity to register a press. It's super simple and honestly super sucky because you also have to worry about ghosting, which is basically when you press too many keys down and some don't register. Membrane is atrocious at that. But the most common type of membrane is rubber domes. Now, rubber dome keyboards are super mushy but also tactile, so you know when you've pressed it. Some people are really into that. Not me. But there's a better way to get a tactile feel, and that's of course tactile switches. Tactile switches are when you press a key down and you can feel when it activates. You feel a bump when you press a key down. Examples of tactile switches are brown switches from literally anyone, GL Tactile by Logitech, and Razer Oranges. They tend to be on the heavier side of switches, which means you need to push down on them harder. I have this here TechWare Phantom 10 keyless with Utemu brown switches, and this is honestly really good. It's not a brand that I know, but hey, take a listen to this nice, relaxing keyboard ASMR. Now for keyboard recommendations, I'm going to do this by price point and format, starting between 20, 60 bucks, 70 through 120, and 130 plus. All the links will be in the description. They are affiliate links with Amazon, so they help support the channel. Thank you. I'm not going to say it out loud as that would take forever, so pause the video now and take a look on screen if you want to pick one of these up. And the harsh reality is that some of these just don't exist because I can't recommend no-name keyboards that I don't trust. So sorry if you're looking for a 60% tactile keyboard between 20 and 60 bucks. I can't find one that I can recommend. And also, there might be a case where you don't have to spend more to get one, so I might just leave one empty. For example, you should not go more expensive than the glorious GMMK Compact for a 60% tactile. Now let's move on to the cheaper side of keyboards. CLICKY. CLICKY switches are similar to tactiles, the only difference being that there's a very audible click when you press a key. These are the switches commonly used in ASMR videos because, hey, it's high frequencies and it's very nice to the ears, I admit. So there's a huge market for these, and therefore there are a lot of cheap keyboards. The big catch with these is that there is no middle ground in price range. They're either really cheap and hard to find a good one, or super expensive and not worth it. The common clicky switches are any types of blues, GL Clicky by Logitech, and Razor Greens. Also, some professional advice, Otema blues are the best. Never get Cherry MX blues. They are awful and way too expensive. I've had my run-in with blue switches. I had a Red Dragon K55-2 after my Corsair Strafe died, and that thing was incredible for the price. Otema blues are the king. But those of you who have been on my channel might know of this thing here, the HC Man mechanical keyboard. This thing was an absolute steal at 23 bucks, and hey, I love this thing. Sadly, I don't think you can get it anymore, but this thing is also really, really good. Here's some typing ASMR. And if you like the sound of that and want to pick one up, you're in luck, because the one I recommend are cheap and worth it. Here they are on screen, and you'll notice there's a theme with the cheap keyboards. I'll get to that later. Now, clicky keyboards are a lot of fun, but when it comes to the G word that I'm not gonna say, unless you're playing rhythm games like Osu or Clone Hero, you're gonna want a linear switch. Now, linear switches are a lot of fun because there's just so many. The main types of linear switches are reds, razor yellows, and geo linears. The thing with linear switches is that they don't have a bump when they activate. It's just one smooth movement all the way to the bottom, and a lot of people really dig that. I do. I love linear switches. My main keyboard, which I mentioned in a bit, is a linear keyboard. And honestly, I have to admit, there is no definitive best feeling linear switch, because at a certain point the only difference is the weight and actuation, which is just subjective as heck. I mean, my old Corsair Strafe had Cherry MX Reds and those felt good. And then I moved up to a Corsair K95 Platinum. Then I moved up to a Corsair K95 Platinum, which has Cherry MX Silvers in it, which are basically the same thing with the lower actuation distance. Sorry if this thing looks like it's been pulled out of a sewer. I spilled coffee on it when I was in VR and I couldn't salvage it, so I gave up. But now I've been using this keyboard with specially branded switches. If you've been to the channel, you definitely know this bad boy, the SteelSeries Apex Pro. Back then I called this thing the best keyboard of all time, and I still stand by that. This thing has switches that are adjustable, which means you can adjust the actuation distance. I mean, that's so cool, but it's also heaps expensive, and that's where linear keyboards lie, at the higher end. Before we get into recommendations, here's some typing ASMR. Now, I'm sorry about these recommendations, but linear keyboards are expensive, so if you want a 60%, you'll have barely any luck finding one for good money. And for those wondering, yes, for the high end, I'm only recommending SteelSeries because I'm biased, damn it. And that's it for the main types of switches, but I still have one more thing to show you guys. Now, I mentioned IBM earlier, and they make classic keyboard, and some people are really into retro keyboards. I mean, those of you that know me know that I'm really into retro things. I mean, I own an Atari 2600 and I still buy vinyls, so I felt like getting myself a retro keyboard. Thing is, IBM doesn't make keyboards anymore. You could always buy a board secondhand, but who wants to do that when Unicomp exists? For those that don't know, Unicomp is a company that is literally making IBM boards with the exact equipment, patents, and machinery that IBM did it with. Some people call them clones, some people call them replicas, some people call them ripoffs, but no, they are IBM boards, just under a different company making them. And a lot of people really dig that. I mean, I did, so that's why I got this. This is a Unicomp PC-122, or as I like to call it, the tank. This thing is massive, and not to mention heavy, and it has a lot of buttons. This thing is what you call a terminal keyboard, and the rave about these things is the typing experience. These use what are called buckling spring switches. They're a tactile switch, and keyboard nerds love them. So you'd think that I would absolutely love this thing, that I'd use this a bunch, and it's a keyboard enthusiast wet dream, and it's a great experience to use. I hate this thing. I hate how it types, and I just don't get it. It's how I feel about Ocarina of Time. Great for the time, If you're into retro stuff, go for it, but it just hasn't aged well. And I know that all you keyboard enthusiasts just dislike the video and are in the middle of typing a paragraph in the comments. But the thing is, keyboards are subjective. I like regular tactile switches, but this is just not for me. Now I hate this board, I hate how it feels, but that doesn't mean I hate Unicomp. Unicomp is probably my favorite keyboard company just for the fact that they're basically preserving a piece of computer history. I love what they're doing and I totally support it. If you want to get a retro piece of computing history, definitely pick up a Unicomp board. I recommend the Model M if you want to get a normal sized board, as this thing will take up half your desk. And if you want to get any of the keyboards in this video, make sure to check the description where I keep all the links to every keyboard recommended here. But wait, what if a keyboard goes off the market? Well, let me tell you some good brands to look for. If you're looking for a cheap keyboard, Red Dragon is absolutely your best friend. I am surprised there's still an unrecognized name, as I feel like they are the heroes of the cheap keyboard market. Every time a friend of mine asks what cheap keyboard they should get, I always recommend a Red Dragon, and they always come back saying they love it. Now, if you're going for any other price point, look for G-Skill, Razer, Logitech, Corsair, Glorious, HyperX, and SteelSeries. Those are the only ones I recommend. But anyways, now for the disclaimer part of the video. No company sent anything in. I paid for everything in this video. None of this video was sponsored, and this was all done out of my passion for keyboards. If you enjoyed, make sure to like and subscribe, and hey, if a friend of yours asks for keyboard advice, send them this video. It would mean a lot to me. This video was a lot of fun to make, and I really hope you guys learned something and found your next keyboard. I really worked hard on this. I hope it helps you, and hey, I'll see you guys next time.